Okay, so let's talk about your intercultural marketing course at M1 level. The first thing I think I need to say about it is you can't put marketing in a box, especially where you're talking about intercultural marketing. We're going to have to define our terms first, and then I'll come back to boxes. What is culture? Is it just people from different places? Are we just talking about national cultures? Or are we talking about regional cultures? Are we talking about the culture of people of a certain age? I'm an academic. I've worked in places like the UHA since 1988. Academics are strange people. Other people look at us and they think we are apart, we are separate. And to some extent, we are, largely because we spend our life with you, the next generation or the one after that, which is great and it's refreshing. But we're not the same as a cadre in EDF. We are a different kind of culture. So culture is difficult to pin down, and it may well be a little bit more complicated and complex than you think. So we're going to spend some time thinking about culture. Obviously, we have to think about marketing. Well, what is marketing? Is it just, well, once a project is developed, we use marketing to offer it back to the people for whom we hope to design it? Is it that simple? Or does marketing factor in across all sorts of different boundaries? Does marketing come into product conception and development? Does marketing research help people to develop a product that's the right size, runs at the right speed, is it the right price, etc.? How can we put a ring around marketing and put it into a box? So we're going to be looking at definitions of, your definitions first, definitions of what you think of as culture, what you think of as marketing, and when you picture things going across between cultures, mixing them up, what do we mean by intercultural marketing? What is the intercultural marketing function? Where does it, should it fit in a company's organizational structure? Is it just part of the marketing department, the marketing function, or is it something more significant than that? In this unit, we're going to be breaking down barriers. Many of the barriers that we produce in our designs and hierarchies and structures for organizations are completely and utterly artificial, because each division, each department needs the other one. And quite often, companies are not good, once they've broken things up into little boxes, they're not good in bringing them back together again. So number one, marketing is a function which runs outside just pure marketing, the 4 Ps, price, promo, etc., and offering things back to the client. It goes far, far, far further than that. For example, why a few years ago did Opel, Vauxhall in England, produce a car called the Nova? Well, I'm sure if somebody had have asked an intercultural manager if Opel had have had an intercultural manager, they would have said, well, that's very good. Nova, new, innovation. That seems to work. But when you look at it from a more Latin point of view, nova, would you buy a car which is called the don't go car? How did that happen? How was it possible that a launch of a new airline route would see hundreds of VIPs getting on board the plane for its inaugural flight, and all the ladies were given flowers which were incredibly beautiful, but signified death? How was that possible? Where did that go wrong? Is that just pure marketing, or is there something missing outside marketing which would get us to do things without producing such horrendous mistakes? So this is not going to be a pure marketing course. If you have not actually done much in the way of marketing, I'm taking it for granted, to get on MICI, that you have. So you really need to engage with a good introduction to marketing textbook. There are plenty of them available online, or as you know, there are a couple of series, both of which I've bought, of course, called The Dummies or The Idiot's Guide to Something or Other. So if you need to bootstrap yourself, lift yourself up, this is not a basic marketing course. This is a higher level course that looks at marketing as a function and a role that goes perhaps across and up and down the hierarchy and the structure of the company. Companies are beginning to realize just how important this is in internationalization. Otherwise, significant mistakes can be made right at the beginning of projects, which were entirely predictable. And companies and organizations have spent an enormous amount of money bringing to the market a product or service which is never going to work. Small idea. Marks and Spencer's, the UK's most successful high street clothes and food store, was running out of business opportunity in British high streets. So it went abroad. And where did it go? To France. That makes distribution simpler. The culture is European, etc. It's not too difficult. It's not like going to Japan or China or India or South America now, is it? Well, Marks and Spencer's got it wrong. Spectacularly wrong. For any number of reasons. They were particularly into women's fashions, and what they managed to do was to assume that women are the same wherever you go in terms of physical shape, the topography of the body. Were women the same shape and sizes? Were they looking for the same styles as they were in the high street in England? No. French women are not characteristically the same shape and size and wanting the same styles as in England. Oh yeah, the French love the idea of the British sandwich. Love that. But ladies' fashions? Phew, disaster. How did that happen? So Marks and Spencer's left Europe and they went back home. And they couldn't grow enough, so they tried Europe again. And they expanded into Belgium as well and other countries within Europe. And they failed again, largely because they'd not understood the culture. So they decided to make it easy on themselves. They would go to America, they would buy an existing American brand, and they would make sure that that worked. It didn't. Marks and Spencer's now find themselves back in the UK in a saturated market with very little growth. And if you have very little growth, are your shareholders going to stay with you for very long before they find someone else that has growth? All of that problem was down to a misconception, largely, of issues to do with culture in the internationalization of the company. So if large companies can make mistakes like that, we've got to make sure that smaller companies learn from those mistakes and that they get it right. We now have this thing called Disneyland Paris. Isn't it wonderful? Terrific. Success. Depends how you measure it. When it was called Euro Disney, no one knew where it was. It was spectacularly unsuccessful, partly because all it did was transplant American concepts and the standard Disney product from America to Europe, which meant that the first French people to go to Disney found that when they wanted an aperitif or wine with their meal, well, there wasn't any, because this is for children. We don't do drink. So in fact, Disney was not a success in some terms early on in its move to France and into Europe. They had assumed that the brand was strong enough. Everybody knows Disney. Everybody knows the films. Everybody knows Bambi and Dumbo and Pinocchio. But they managed to get that wrong, largely because they didn't understand the cultural background. In fact, as I understand it at least, although I'm not a specialist in Disney, Disney only survived because of a sheikh with petrol money who was absolutely red dang of Disney and who bailed it out. Otherwise, it might actually not be in operation in, well, near, in this case, Paris. So, culture and marketing to those cultures is incredibly complex, and it's easy to make mistakes. Companies are beginning to realize just how complex it is, just how interesting it is, and just how important it is to get the right people into intercultural management and marketing. For example, a few years ago, we sent a student to Zalando, which I'm sure many of the ladies will know is an online retailer that started off in Germany. We had the student who went there who looked at the site and the fact that they were trying to attract French ladies to buy off the Zalando website. And this French girl, who had gone on placement, looked at it and thought, a straight translation from German to French just doesn't work in this particular context. It just doesn't work. French ladies like to be sold to in a totally different way. It's a cultural thing. So she did some research in this, wrote a proposition for Zalando as to what they should do, which was no longer to just translate their their German website into French, but to create a totally separate website with a different style and a different feel specifically for the market here in France, largely at that time a feminine market. The beauty of that was that the student was told, you've come up with a great idea, you're employed, you have a full-time post, go and recruit yourself a MICAI assistant on placement and make the site work. If you look now, there is a Zalando.fr site and it does work, and the student is now very much in charge of developing and enlarging that, and as I understand it, other markets as well. So it's critically important that we understand how culture and marketing come together, and it's not just about prices and colours, or not marketing things on broken days if you happen to be in China. There's a lot more to it than that. So what I'm trying to do is to get to the bottom of that with you. It's not necessarily going to be easy, but I am going to put you into a very big project in which I'm going to give you a real brief from the Chambers of Commerce to try and help businesses to overcome their fears. Businesses have seen so many industry leaders make big mistakes with moving abroad, moving into new markets. and they've lost a lot of money, particularly because things have gone wrong early on in the process. So we're going to look at some of these success and failures and try to work out how to have things which are likely to be more successful and how to avoid things which are more likely to lead to failure. And then I'm going to put you in a role working for the Chambers of Commerce and their members, many of whom are frightened to address the idea of going international. And we are going to give them, you are going to give them, a roadmap of how to do it. Okay, so I've tried to give you a flavour for the spirit of the unit. If you want the detail of the thing, well, there is a unit description in your livre, your handbook, and there's also one on my menu system, which you will find on Tonyversity, which of course you're on to be able to look at this video. Okay, so there we go. I've tried to explain what it's all going to be about. But it's not going to be a straight marketing course. I'm trying to deal with things which are not necessarily in textbooks. Like, where do you put the intercultural management and marketing function? Should it be inside the marketing department? Should it be working in the chairman's office? Where do we put it and why? How do we control the other business functions? How do we influence them to be able to make sure that the things that they're doing are not storing up a mistake that's going to be very dear and expensive in the future? So there we go. There's the flavor for the unit. Let's see how it works, but it is not going to be a straight out of the textbook marketing course. There are plenty of marketing books, including some intercultural marketing texts, which are online and available to you if you look at the unit description on my website or on your handbook. Download them, look at them, read them, try and bootstrap and lift yourself up, and then you'll be able to handle the type of slightly more complicated issues that we're going to be dealing with at what is, after all, master's level. One final thing to finish with. This course went live in the early 2000s. At that time, in France, we had barely got the internet going. And we were starting to move away from standardization of products. Here it is, take it or leave it, making no concessions to culture and internationalization. And we were moving, with the grace of the internet, towards some recognition that culture needed to be factored in. We should make cultural adaptations. That's the way that MICI is born. Well, that's fine. But the internet has now developed to such an extent that maybe that is not going to be the game forever. Maybe the goalposts have moved. Maybe in the future, what we're after is customization and personalization. Don't treat me as an English person. Treat me as Tony Jolly. Find out about me, know what makes me tick, know what I like, and offer me things that I want, the way I want them, how I want them, at the price I want them, when I want them, where I want them. Maybe MICI, in a sense, is an interim stage between standardization, and the middle of the continuum is perhaps cultural adaptation, and the end may well be complete customization and personalization. If that's sounding complicated, think about Spotify, think about Amazon. If you go on Spotify, I guess Deezer's probably the same too. You get the software working with what you've already told you, what you've downloaded, what you've listened to, and building you new menus. If you like so-and-so, you would certainly like this. Oh, there's a new album out by somebody that you've been listening to recently. It's here. You've only got to click on the button. The way my Amazon front page looks or my Spotify front page looks is different to everybody's. I'm unique. They're beginning to treat me as unique. So is this issue of culture and adaptation just a midpoint on the way between standardization and customization? It'll be interesting to see, because one thing you have to think about is cost benefit. If we start changing and adapting to each and every country and each and every culture and each and every language the world over, that costs a fortune. Standardization is cheap, but cultural adaptation isn't. Perhaps there comes a point, and it may be up to you in your career to decide it, where standardization should be kept and to what extent adaptation should be maintained or extended or dispensed with in favor of personalization and customization. You are right, as we say, on the cusp, I believe at least, the tipping point between those three positions. And I think we're moving from just cultural adaptation towards personalization and customization. And we're wanting to explore that in this particular unit from the corporation, the company's point of view. So you will have a quite big, very real task in which there will be individual roles, team roles, and a group concept to deliver in the form of a consultancy report. More about that later, but for the moment, I hope I've given you the spirit of what we're trying to do at least. Okay, looking forward to working with you and hoping that at some point post-COVID, we can actually be working together in some kind of proximity. Okay, all the very best of luck with I, and if I can help, you have my email, and if you want to call a meeting, we'll try Zoom or Google Meet, etc., to be able to iron out any issues that we do have. Thank you very much, and speak to you later. Goodbye.